Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and today I'm here to share with you a technique I haven't used in quite some time. I'm calling it the layered cardstock technique for cards. And what it is you take several pieces of cardstock and you layer them together, and then you do your stamping on those layers. For best results, you should use a 5x7 size card. So what you see on the screen are the layers, 3 layers of cardstock that have been, where I'm giving you the dimensions that would make 3 layers for a 5x7 card with a 1/4 inch border on each side. Once you have your 3 layers of cardstock cut out, and by the way, I was able to get these 3 layers out of one 8.5x11 sheet of paper. But once you get those 3 layers cut out, then what you want to do is stack those layers on top of each other and use a piece of washi tape to hold them together. So here you can see that the 3 layers are stuck together and adhered together in order to keep them all together when I place them in my MISTI stamping tool. It is best to use some sort of stamping tool to make this card. Because you are likely going to have to stamp your impression multiple times to make sure that the image is showing up around the edges, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Because I will be using watercolor to color in my my image. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Because this ink is waterproof, and it will not bleed when I add the watercolors to my card. What I did learn though is that I do need to heat set the ink after I stamp my image. Today I'm going to be using a stamp set called Friendship Blooms from Gina K and Hero Arts. They partnered together to make this beautiful floral stamp set that has some really lovely sentiments in it as well. So I'm going to use the large floral stamp as well as the sentiment on this card today. So I've placed the stamp inside my MISTI 2, and now I'm going to stamp my image. A trick that I learned some time ago from some old crafty friends was when you get a new stamp, in order to make sure that the ink adheres well, go ahead and run a emery board or a piece of sandpaper across your image to make sure that the ink adheres well. So here I am stamping, giving my first impression on my stamp, and you can see there around the edges where, due to the different layers of the paper, the image did not stamp completely. So I'm going back in with a second stamp, and I'm being careful to go around the edges where there's a transition from one sheet of paper to the next. Because there is a little bit of dimension on that, you are going to have to press a little bit harder on those areas to make sure your image comes off. And there you can see at the top where the image has filled in a whole lot more than it was initially. So I'm going to keep going around and just pressing around the edges of the paper to get the best impression that I possibly can. So at this point, I'm satisfied with the impression, and now I'm going to heat set this ink because, like I said, I learned earlier that the ink will smudge, so I'm going ahead and heat setting it, hitting it with my heat tool. And now I'm going to come in and finish making the connections that just would not connect with the image. There's some edges on, or some lines on the stamp that didn't connect. So what I'm using is my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen. This pen is also water fast, so it will not bleed when I use my watercolor. So just around the edges where it was a little bit difficult to get the connection or the stamp to stamp completely, I'm going in with that Faber-Castell pen and just filling in those lines. There's not a whole lot of them, but just enough that to me and for me, I just wanted to make sure my image was complete. So I'm taking the time to go in and fill in these lines. And the fine tip on this Faber-Castell Pit Artist pen really makes it easy to make those connections, and it looks like the stamps completely. So once I finish that up, I'm going to bring in my watercolor set. I use the Kuretake Gonzai Tambi 36 color water set, and I absolutely love this watercolor set. I've had this palette for quite some time because I am not, while I love watercolor, I am not the best watercolorer by far. Additionally, I don't watercolor like all the time. But when I do, I want to make sure I'm using my watercolor, I'm sorry, my Gonzai Tambi watercolor set because I just absolutely love it. It is, to me, worth the investment. So now I've kind of wet the colors that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using some shades of red and some shades of yellow. And now I'm going in and putting my first layer of paint down. And by the way, because I knew that I was going to be using watercolors, this image and this card is being made with Bristol Smooth paper, which is a paper that will react and work well with watercolors. So I'm going in and I'm shading in and putting down my first layer of red paint, watercolor paint on this flower. And you can tell that it's not even like it's gonna, like watercolors are not supposed to be, or supposed to be. It's not even. So I've gotten that first flower colored in, and now I'm going in with the second on the second flower and getting it all shaded in and colored in. This is like a poppy red kind of color. And then you'll see in a little bit that I'm going to go back in once this dries, and I'm going to dry in between each color. Once I'm going to go back in with a darker red that is going to give me the highlights. So I'm finished with that red, the kind of poppy color red, and now I'm heat setting that. The next flowers I'm going to do in yellow. And this is like a bright sunshine yellow, very pretty color. One of the things that I like about the Gonzai Tambi watercolors is that I can get very, very translucent, or I can get very opaque paints and shading and coloring with my watercolors, all from the same palette. And so in this instance, I want a little bit of a transparent color because I want the black detail to come through. Now you notice here I had to hold the paper down because that portion of the image actually transitioned across two pieces of paper. So just to make sure that you're able to keep your watercoloring consistent, when you transition across two pieces of paper, you are going to want to hold it down a little bit with your finger, and then that makes it very easy and doable. Now, because I'm hitting this image with my heat tool several times, the washi tape underneath wants to uncurl and loosen up because the adhesive on the washi tape is reacting to the heat. So I'm just pressing it down a little bit, and it's still holding. So I'm just press the tape down a little bit after I finish heat setting and move on and keep coloring. So now I'm coming in with the second red color, the darker red color, and adding in a little bit of shading. And this really, really brought the image to life to me. And I'm going to go back in a little bit and soften up some of those hard edges on the shading, just to make it look a little bit, more realistic and natural. Hit it with the heat tool one more time. Now it's time. See, I'm coming in and smoothing some of those hard edges out. Now it's time to come in with the darker yellow and add that to the flowers, to the roses for the highlighting. This is probably not going to be, at least with using watercolors, a card that you're going to be able to produce in mass. If you had a layering image, you probably could use this technique and create in mass, because you could just rotate those images through your stamping tool and have your layers of cardstock all set up and ready to go, and just be able to rotate those through your stamping tool and be able to get a lot of them done. But because this is watercolor and it's all done by hand, again, this probably is not a card that you would create in mass. But whoever is the lucky person to receive this card should just hope they fall in love with it and just as enamored with it the way it turns out as I am. So now I'm going to go in with a almost chartreusey kind of green color for my first layer on my leaves. And I'm going to color all the leaves in the same way, just for the sake of time and to make it easier on me. So I'm coloring in all the leaves, and you can see there where I was kind of heavy-handed with the bottom leaves. So I go in and pick up some of the paint that's puddled on those leaves and use it on the leaves at the top. So I hardly ever have to go back to the palette for the green, just because there's enough already on the image. I learned this trick from Christina Werner. Watching her, is it always good to keep a paper towel or a towel of some sort around to dab up some extra color. See, I'm about to do that right there, where there was just too much water on my on that particular portion of the image, and I didn't want it puddling up. So, and it didn't like the way that the ink was laying, so I just dabbed some off. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to heat set this green, because I'm going right in behind this with a darker color of green and adding some shading to my leaves. So I want my leaves to have shading just like my flowers do rather. So I'm just hitting a little bit of the edges and tips of the flower. I'm not even being precise about making sure that the shading is on the right, same side, because really I'm just adding a little bit. What I'm wanting is just a little bit of depth to the leaves, and not necessarily being, specific as to which way the light is hitting the arrangement. So I'm drying that second layer of green ink, and voila, we have a painted image. So now it's time to assemble the card. And you can see here I'm taking the card loose and I'm removing the washi tape. And now I'm going to come in with my adhesive. For this particular card, I'm layering each piece directly on top of the other piece. Because we have the images crossing over from layer to layer, I can line up. It's easy to line up and find out where the image is supposed to go, but it's also challenging because there are so many details and lines that you really want to make sure that they line up as close to exact as possible. And so when you could use a liquid adhesive to do this. That might give you a little bit more work time to make sure that you can move your images around. But for me, I just used my my 3M tape runner and adhered it all to the card, each layer to the card. Now I'm coming in with some foam tape, and I don't know if you guys have discovered, but Dollar Tree has really stepped up their craft supplies. So this foam tape is some foam tape that I purchased from Dollar Tree, and I only purchased one pack to begin with because I wanted to give it a try and see how strong the adhesive was and to see if I liked it. But the first time I used it, I was quite pleased with how strong it held. Like it holds really, really nicely. And another thing that I like about it is in the package, you get 3 different widths of foam tape. So I think I remember, oh yes, here it is. So I'm showing you right here the 3 different widths that you get. So you get like a skinny, a medium, and a like normal size, normal width of the foam tape. So I'm just taking off the backing and getting that ready to put on my card base. I already have a 5x7 card base that I've already scored and folded that I'm going to be adding my card to, the panel to. And then off camera, I also stamped and heat embossed a sentiment from that same stamp set onto some black cardstock with white embossing powder. So here you have the final card, and I could not love this card more. I was very shocked and pleasantly pleased with how nicely it came together. I had an idea, but sometimes you are surprised at how well the idea comes together. And what I'm about to show you now is a second card that I made off camera. And what I did for this card was I popped up each layer of the stacked cardstock, or the layered cardstock. And this this card was made with a layering set of images. So that made it a whole lot easier. I hope you have enjoyed this card making and this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And until I see you again, have a great day. Enjoy!